When I was a teenager, I was sheltered. My parents kept me in the house, very tight grip. I tired you not go outside. If you go outside, this will happen to you. All these bad things will happen to you. Do not leave the house. Stay inside. That was my teenage years.
We here at Urban Creators and Life Do Grow Farm, we are really a pillar in the community. During the quarantine, we were still out on the streets serving people food as a means to try and help fight food insecurity. And this farm was a way that we could grow fresh produce that was locally grown, locally harvested, and organic and culturally appropriate for our direct community members, and deliver that in the form of a meal. So the land that we're on here at the farm was once a brick and paper factory. And what they left behind was something that I just call scorched earth. It's earth that's uninhabitable by human beings because of the toxicness that's coming out from it, that has been left behind from factories that didn't do a good job cleaning up their own toxic waste. And you can't grow in it. A lot of things that you have to consider. So you want to make sure that the soil that you're growing in isn't contaminated and that it's good, because the food that you eat that comes out of that soil is in essence carrying whatever it is that that soil contains. So underneath this beautiful oasis that we have here is slabs of concrete, the foundations of that factory. And we're sitting on a mound right now that has been brought in over 10 years of time. Constantly testing the soil, but we know where it's sourced from. We know it's not the soil of this exact land, but knowing that the land beneath that soil, we can't grow in.
But we do run a community garden called the Dakota Street Garden, which is up the block. And that had high levels of, mercury and a lot of other contaminants.
But there's ways we can mitigate it by bringing in our own, and then by also learning ways that over time you can reduce heavy metals in soil, such as planting sunflowers.
So there's a lot of soil testing, and a lot of gardens and farms in the city have to build beds and grow above ground and not directly into the ground. We have a staff of about, off the top of my head, I think 10 people, full-time staff, 2 part-timers. And when it comes to volunteers, we have 2 volunteer days a month, first Saturday and the third Saturday of every month. And on average, we get anywhere between 10 to about 30 people on both of those Saturdays. So like I said, we have a total of 2 acres worth of space. 1 acre is devoted to growing. And out of that 1 acre of growing space, I think last year we calculated we grew up about 35,000 pounds of produce, beginning in the spring and ending in the winter. We grew about 35,000 pounds. So we have events and we also have educational programming. We like to separate those 2 things. They kind of work in tandem, but they're 2 separate things. I'm in charge more of the programming, and that is programming that addresses the needs of people in the community. So we have programming starting up in June. Last year, we created something called the Community Food Education Workshops. Us creating educational workshops was to teach people, okay, this is what we're growing and this is how you cook it, or this is a special type of herb that we grow, this is how you can use it to make it into lotion or into oil. So from that, then it kind of became this bigger idea that we need to really dial back into teaching people about the things that we do here.
One way we did that last year was we had an African diaspora cooking course here. So we had a chef that specializes in an Afrofuturist vision of the world, and was able to take crops that we know are indigenous to the motherland, such as okra, such as greens, collards, and a lot of crops that people may not be aware of that are indigenous to the motherland, that here in America may have just gotten lost in some of that history. So we used it as a way to reconnect with that ancestral root to what were our ancestors eating, and how can we grow that here, and how can we make sure that it's culturally appropriate to the folks that identify with our region.
Back to the land movement, maybe 60s or 70s, when people were interested in doing organic farming and growing their own food. Most of these people didn't have much money, and you don't get much money farming. So the idea was go to your community and ask them for their support. They sign up for basically a subscription of the produce that you grow from your farm, and they pay you in advance. And that gives you the money to buy seeds and get ready to start the season. And then when the harvest comes in, it's distributed amongst the members. Really, like, growing more food was more fun. And every time we got a little bit bigger, it was more rewarding. And so we don't grow as many specialty items anymore, although we've really tried to keep cooking and eating well, like, at the center of our values. But honestly, it's gone from fancy stuff to just growing the everyday food that families want to eat. And so that's meant, a lot more items that are pretty standard and basic, because that's what people eat every day. So there's a lot of people out there who just love eating and cooking and feel like connecting directly with the farm is the best way to get what they want. Other people, it seems that the values are a bit more abstract, and that just supporting a business that's doing the right thing by the environment and by their employees may be more important than getting that specific piece of food that they were looking for. We always wanted it to be about something besides providing privileged people with, like, the best vegetable that they could afford. So what we figured was we should work on this food access issue here in our community, and we should try to give folks who are struggling with food access the same thing that our members get, which is not just the vegetable itself, but the sense of connection and the sense that they're really part of something that's special and privileged. So we partnered with some folks in Yaden, which is like a Southwest Philadelphia neighborhood that really struggles with access to fresh, healthy food. So we really wanted it to be about people there getting the access. And so we got about 30 members last year who did not pay for their shares. And one of the best parts of it was we actually appealed to our largely privileged, largely wealthy membership to sponsor this activity. And a lot of them did that. And it was very inspiring to see these folks realize right away, like, hey, we're the privileged ones. We get access to these great vegetables. And what we want to do is help other people be able to afford them if we can.